welcome the pilgrims and to the buffaloes who once ruled the plain. Like the vultures circling beneath the dark clouds, looking for the rain.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Bill Cobbs, and welcome to Bill Cobbs on the Record. You know, this is an interesting time. Sunday, they talked about the 50th anniversary of rap and hip hop. And, I couldn't help but to think back. The intro that you heard today was Gil Scott-Heron, Winter in America. And, Gil Scott-Heron for me is the beginning of the rap and hip hop age. So I wanted to start the show today with that and to make sure that you understand that what I want to accomplish with this show is education to help you to understand the impact that politics and that money have on what's happening in our community, and to give you the opportunity to just think about things. So with that, I'm going to start with something that is occurring right now in Florida, but I fully expect will migrate across this country to every other state. And it's interesting that it's happening now because this is Black History Month. As you may or may not know, Governor DeSantis in Florida has decided that teaching a advanced placement course in Black history doesn't have a place in Florida. And I'm not really surprised by that because I understand why they don't want our young people to know their history and why they don't want to teach our history. And what we're going to start off talking about this afternoon is what that's all about. You see, fundamentally, one of the things that people like DeSantis knows is that the more you know about your history, the less able they are to oppress you. And, when you think about what goes into that history, it's time for us to wake up. I want to share with you some things that you probably aren't aware of. All of us have banking relationships today. And the first inclination regarding those banking relationships is to use the institutions that are close to you. But what we don't pay attention to is that those banks like Wells Fargo, like Bank of America, like Chase, all of those banks played an integral part in supporting slavery and keeping you oppressed. And that's something that the establishment that DeSantis belongs to doesn't want you to understand. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to know that if you get busy and start to build your own, you start to take away from them the ability to control you. Right now, since last year, we've seen 9 increases in interest rates. And those 9 increases have played a significant part for all of us working class people, because if you have a variable rate mortgage, if you have a variable rate credit card, if you have a variable rate car loan, you are paying more today than you were 6 months ago. And chances are, as long as the Fed continues to increase those interest rates, they will increase. And the problem with that is that every time there's an increase, that impacts your family budget, because, if you started out with a adjustable rate mortgage last year that was at 2%, And now it's gone up to 3.5%. That means that, your mortgage costs have almost doubled in a very, very short period of time. And I don't know a lot of people that can absorb that. And when you deal with banking institutions that you don't control, where you don't have a presence, you don't have any opportunity to impact that. So one of the things that I preach every single day is that if we want to really build a new Black Wall Street, we got to do it ourselves because nobody else is going to do it for us. As some of you may know, the city of Detroit in their last mayoral election had an issue on the ballot for creating a reparations committee. And there was a lot of fanfare attached to it. And there were supposed to be 12 members selected to sit on that board. Now, their last mayoral election was in 2021. And thus far, this commission that was supposed to deal with reparations has got exactly 4 members. And they can't do anything until they have the full 11 membership. Now, I'm pretty smart. And one of the things I recognize is when I'm being hoodwinked and bamboozled. And the folks in Detroit are being hoodwinked and bamboozled because the city of Detroit is never going to pay them reparations. And I will tell you why. City governments and state governments have to have balanced budgets. That means they have to be able to raise the cash they need to pay their obligations. And the only way to raise money as a city government or a state government is how? It's to tax the citizens. So think about this. If, in fact, they were to create a tax so that they could pay the reparations, who would that money be coming from? It'd be coming from you and people that look like you. And so we got to get smart. We got to understand the politics and the finances that are working against us to keep us suppressed. One of the things that I say, particularly about communities like Flint and Detroit, is when you look around, you have the power to control what goes on in your city if you are willing to commit to doing the things that it takes to make it happen. I'm a big advocate for community-based cooperatives because they give people the opportunity to begin to build a community wealth base that helps them to avoid having to go to people who are going to take advantage of them otherwise when it comes to seeking resources to buy a home, to buy a car, to start a business. Imagine for a second living in Flint and driving around the city and seeing all of the vacant land that exists today that's just sitting there and nothing's being done with it. And imagine what would happen if Flint citizens got together and bought up a patch of land and on that land started to do new single family home development. And they started out with a modest goal of building 100 new homes. Imagine how much more attractive it would be for people to relocate to the city of Flint. The thing that I don't think people think about is that living in Michigan, life is going to change significantly in the next 10 or 15 years. And you either have an opportunity to be a part of that change or to be a victim of that change. And the thing that concerns me is that when I look at my communities in Flint and Benton Harbor and Detroit, I see Black folks being pushed out because the first step towards pushing them out is not having affordable housing that people can afford to live in. The second step is to increase rental housing but also increase the rates that people have to pay for it, so that there comes a time when they can't afford it, and they've got to go. So we have got to get smart about doing things that are not necessarily going to immediately benefit us as an individual, but they will benefit us as a community. You know, you can't fight this war alone. We have got to learn how to work together and recognize that true political power only happens when you have economic resources behind it to make it happen. And you don't have to start big, but you got to start. And if starting means that, you can convince 100 citizens in the city of Flint to put together a cooperative, then that's where you start. And, you don't have to put a lot of money in it, but you put a little money in it. And then you can start to think about building things like a housing cooperative, like putting together a community-based credit union. Imagine the power in having a community-based credit union that people support by taking their money away from the regular banks and putting it in their own credit. Reasonable rates to the people that they live next door to, and building on that to have more of a say in what happens in your community. See, I'm going to say something now that may offend some people, that may piss some folks off, but I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to educate. I'm here to inform. I'm here to make you think. Excuse me, folks. I apologize. And in making you think, hopefully it will inspire you to act. You've got organizations in front like the Mott Foundation. And every time somebody mentions Mott Foundation to me, my first question is, what is that foundation doing? What is that foundation doing for the people of Flint? How is it helping to create an environment where people build better lives? If you're not part of the problem, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And there are a lot of things now that are part of the problem. I encourage you, if you're listening today, to pick up the phone and call in, or type in a question that I can have an opportunity to share my thoughts with you on and respond to. This initiative to put together this program is one that I'm really excited about, because I believe that I have a message for you that will be a benefit to you. This is the first of I hope many programs that will allow me to come and speak with you. I have a long-standing relationship with Flint. I never lived in Flint, but my wife's family is from Flint. My wife was born and raised in the city of Flint. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law still live there, and I care about that city. And one thing you should know is that Michigan is an evolving commerce center. In the next 10 to 15 years, if we just do the right things, you're going to see the population of this state increase dramatically. You look at Flint today and you got maybe 80,000 people. In 10 to 15 years, if we set things up accordingly and we, effectively plan for our future through community and economic development, Flint could be a city of 250,000 people. And the way it's going to happen, people say, well, how's that possible? How is Michigan going to grow like that? It's going to grow because Michigan has the most important asset available in this country, that asset is water. You know, the water is the key to Michigan's future. You know, as other parts of the country dry up, as other parts of the country don't have the access to the water resources of the Great Lakes, they're going to want to move to where that water is. That makes Michigan a very attractive place. So when somebody comes to you now and says they want to buy your house or they want to move you out and make room for somebody else, no. The answer is no. You know, that household that you have is probably the most valuable piece of wealth that you own. And we've got to get more involved in making sure we hold on to that wealth and pass it down within our families. I don't know why I'm coughing so much today, but unfortunately I am. I think that I want to go back a second to the banking situation. You know, it's bad enough that the banks that we put our money in are the same ones that helped to support slavery, but it's even worse when you consider the fact that on average, Black people pay more to access capital than any other group in this country. And there's no reason that we can't have our own other than taking the first step, starting to make something happen. As long as we continue to follow the same behavioral patterns and put our money in somebody else's institution and then go hat in hand and ask them to help us by providing a home loan or by providing a car loan or something like that, they're going to do it, but they're going to do it at rates that are higher than what somebody else will pay for it. And that's just not fair. You know, just like in Detroit where you pay higher car insurance rates. I suspect that happens in Flint as well. One of the things that I think has really got me going, particularly in Black History Month now, is the fact that people were talking a lot about what happened in Memphis and, you know, how they were so quick to charge those 5 young Black officers, but nobody else has been charged yet. I think people have a right to be concerned about that. But I think the most important thing that we need to be concerned about is making sure that policing in our communities is more about helping the citizens than it is about being an occupying force. And I say that because, you know, we could have different kind of policing if we just adjusted our attitudes. You know, in an earlier part of my life, I used to be a cop. And one of the things that amazes me about policing now that is a lot different is the fact that rarely, if ever, do you see police officers spend any time out of their cars. They spend 100% of their time running from incident to incident, but they never take time to get out of their car and walk down a block and knock on the doors of the people that live there and introduce themselves. And one of the things that I know is that people don't talk to people they don't trust. So if the first interaction you have with the cop that patrols your neighborhood is him, you know, seeking information from you without you knowing anything about them, it's not going to be receptive. And you know, one of the things about the city of Flint now that I think everybody is concerned about is the level of crime and how you impact that crime without having to go out and hire, you know, hundreds more police officers. You do it by making sure that the officers have a connection to the people that they are there to protect and serve. You do it by changing the way you have accountability for the police department up and down. You know, we could fix our law enforcement problem in Michigan in 60 days if we just did things more intelligently. One of the things that we have got to do is recognize that in Michigan, we have stricter requirements for doctors and lawyers and dentists and accountants than we have for police officers. You know, it's easier for one of those folks to lose their ability to carry out their profession than it is for a police officer. And that's wrong. So we've got to find a way if we want our police to operate in a more effective way and to service in a more efficient way to make sure that there's an incentive for them to want to see their communities prosper and grow. Um, I would tell you that there are a couple of recommendations I would make to our governor right now. One of those recommendations is that any police officer who is accused in a citizen's complaint and found to be liable in that citizen's complaint, after 4 complaints in a 2-year period, they go on a year's probation. During that year probation, if they misbehave and they continue the same kind of pattern, then they're dismissed. And once they're dismissed, their Michigan license to be a police officer is revoked. They can't go from the department they were with to another and get a job. You know, one of the problems that we have in the state is that people go into police work and they go from department to department to department because nobody weeds out the bad apples. And the idea that management or the union is going to do the weeding out is a ridiculous idea. It's never going to happen. You're never going to have a situation where somebody at the top is going to admit that their lack of leadership is responsible for the work not being taken care of. So with that in mind, what needs to happen is the governor needs to appoint a state authority that will be responsible for reviewing every police action that is found to be negative in regards to citizen interaction. That way, we're not asking the fox to guard the henhouse. You know, when you ask the chief of a police department to clean his own house, he's more interested in hiding what's going on than he is in fixing the problem. And we need to make sure that we're relieving him of the responsibility of fixing his department and focusing him on providing the leadership to get the day-to-day work done. So those are a couple of the things that are going through my mind right now. I'm interested in knowing what you as citizens want to talk about in our weekly programs. So if you got an idea, if you've got a comment about some of the things that we went through today, if you want to ask a question, type it in. I'm interested in knowing what's on your mind. This is going to be your program. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to make sure that from a political and financial standpoint, you have the information you need to make sure that you're getting the best out of your life in the city and in the state. You know, I'm disturbed because I ran for governor in 2018. And when I ran for governor, I remember Gretchen Whitmer saying very, very candidly that she was going to fix Flint. Now, unless I miss something, the issues with Flint water have not been 100% resolved yet. And, frankly, because we didn't hold her feet to the fire, there's no incentive for her to do anything right now because she's finished her first term. She's got elected to a second term. Michigan is a term limited state, so she can't run again. So all she's got to do is run out the clock. We got to learn to make sure that we ask our politicians for commitments on what to do, what they're going to do before we give them the job. Politics is the only where somebody can get a job and keep that job for 4 years doing it in a horrible way. We have got to make sure that we stop that from happening. Now, one of the interesting things is that we as Black folks are pretty loyal to the Democratic Party. I don't see that same kind of loyalty coming from the Democratic Party in the opposite direction. Now, as you know, this Saturday, the Democratic Party is holding its convention at the old Cobo Hall in Detroit. And I would tell you that if you have the opportunity to go, you need to be there. Because one of the things that's going to happen is they're going to elect a new chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party. Now, I'm biased, and I don't have a problem telling you I'm biased. There's a young woman running from Detroit. Her name is Cynthia Johnson. Cynthia was in the state legislature, and for reasons that I won't spend a lot of time on, she was unable to get her name on the ballot for the last election, so she lost her spot. But I know Cynthia Johnson. I know her commitment to the people of the state, and I know that she would be the right kind of person to have in the leadership of MDP. One of the things that we have in the Michigan Democratic Party are these affinity groups, the coalitions that look like certain groups. You got the Michigan Black Democratic Party group. You've got the Latino group. You've got the LGBTQ group. There are any number of them. But one of the things that's frustrating for me is that when you look at the Black Caucus in the MDP, it's had the same leadership for over 4 years. And unless I miss something, I haven't seen that leadership effectively voice the concern of Black citizens yet. So it's time for a change. The person leading that group is Keith Williams. And, you may like Keith Williams because he's a good glad hander, but he's terrible at being the voice of being the face of Black people in Michigan because he's not putting in the work. By now you should have a cohesive caucus organization where the leaders from each part of the state meet. That's not happening. And one of the things that you need to understand is that Michigan is an interesting state because 75% of the Democratic voters in this state reside in Southeast Michigan, specifically in Genesee County, in Macomb County, in Wayne County, in Oakland County, and in Washtenaw County. So you ask yourself, what does that mean? It means that there's the ability to exercise power. There's an ability to get things done. You know, in 2018, when Gretchen won the election for governor, she won because the folks in those 5 counties I just mentioned to you did something they hadn't done before. In 2014, when it was it was Rick Snyder and Mark Schauer going at each other. Mark Schauer had 1.475 million votes. Rick Snyder had almost 1.6 million votes. In the 2018 election, Gretchen Whitmer got almost 2.3 million votes against her Republican opposer. All of those additional votes from 2018 and from 2014 to 2018 came from your communities. Let me say that again. Those additional votes came from your communities. Now, the question that each of us need to ask ourselves is, what did we get? There is no urban agenda that came out of the Whitmer group. So we didn't really win anything with Gretchen. You know, they got they got a group of women, and this is not an attack on women, but they got 3 white women in the top 3 jobs in the state. And you know, I'm willing to listen. You tell me what they got done that benefited your community, and I'll hear you out. But effectively, they got your votes, and you got nothing. You know, and this is the thing you need to understand. You need to ask yourself a question. When was the last time we had anyone that looked like us in one of the statewide offices? Because it's been a long time, you know, and it's been a long time because we took our eye off the ball and we stopped working together to make sure that we had our voices heard. You know, I think MDP takes the Black vote for granted. And I'm not telling, and by no means am I telling you to go out and vote for the Republicans. I'm just letting you know that we got to come up with a better strategy for making sure that the Michigan Democratic Party, you know, works for us as well as everybody else. Because right now that's not happening. Bernice Simmons, are you still there? If you are, I got a question. You say you're listening. Tell me, if you can, what you want to hear more of. Because just like you put in have some discussion about this. Karen, if you're there, if you've got a question or a thought, please type it in. I'd love to hear it. Okay. So somebody let me know if they're planning on going to the convention on Saturday. I'm curious because I haven't heard a lot of dialogue traveling around about the convention. with us, and I would hate for us not to have have a significant presence. Jamaica, how are you today? What would you like to hear more of in this show as if we continue to do it on a weekly basis? Now, Karen said she went to the last one, but she's not going this time. Uh, I'm curious. What are you hearing the young people in Flint say about whether or not they're going to be a part of this convention? Because I think one of the things that needs to happen is we need to have more young people showing up and participating in the convention, so that we're doing more than just providing the Democratic Party with votes. Yeah, yeah, I got you. Yeah, Karen, you're right. We don't do a good enough job in recruiting young people and making sure that they show up. In fact, I would almost say to you that the only time I see young people at that convention is if they're running for office or looking for a job. They don't go because they're engaged in the political process. So Jamaica, what do you think we need to do? What can we do in the next 4 days to get the word out so that people show up? You know, because this is something that's near and dear to my heart. So, Karen, if they're looking for fresh, new, innovative ideas, what about them bringing some fresh, new, innovative ideas to the table? You know, you don't have to you don't have to be 30 or 35 or 40 years old to have an opinion. They're going to be the ones who are most impacted by what happens. So they need to make sure that their voices are heard. One of the things I was thinking about Jamaica is seeing whether the Michigan Democratic Party would create a young people's caucus so that we could have a group that was specifically dedicated to their interest and make them a part of the convention itself. Now, I had every intention of making it to this year's convention, but unfortunately, I'm going to be recuperating because I've got surgery on Thursday. Otherwise, I'd be there. You know, uh, I would I would make a recommendation to you. I would see whether or not you could get an interest started in Flint and target someone between the ages of 20 and 26 to become the spokesperson for that group and get them engaged, because one of the things that we got to do is make sure that we're developing talent that can represent us in Lansing. I think that if you look at some of the young people that have gone there, they haven't had the right kind of coaching and the right kind of development, and they haven't been able to succeed. I'm not going to mention any names, but we all know that they exist. We can do a much better job of uh, getting, as you say, Karen, succession planning done so that people are ready when the opportunity presents itself. When I hope that when the show wraps up today, that one of the things you do is to pull out the song that led into it. It's by Gil Scott Heron, and it's called "Winter in America." And I'm probably I'm probably showing my age, but for me, Gil Scott Heron was the father of modern hip hop and rap. Before there was a Run DMC, before there was an LL Cool J, before there was a Ice Cube or an Ice T, there was Gil Scott Heron. And the thing that was so beautiful about Gil Scott was that everything that he put together had a message. It talked about being engaged in owning our community. And unfortunately, I think that we've kind of lost our way. Every day I engage in these conversations, and one of those conversations that I have very often is that since 1968, since the assassination of Martin Luther King, that we've been backpedaling rather than moving forward. We haven't made any progress because somehow we convinced ourselves that the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act were going to be enough to carry us forward. And unfortunately, when you understand the history of America, you will understand that history is one of broken promises and lies. When you want to read something interesting, I suggest to you that you sit down and read the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments. And then after you read them, you ask yourself a simple question. If the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments were there to make sure that the interests and welfare of folks that look like us were taken care of, why do we have to continue to have the same battle about civil rights? Why do we have to continue to have the same battle about voting rights? Why can't it ever be a settled issue that we never have to visit anymore? If I could have an answer to that question, I could probably figure out some other things. But unfortunately, those are words on paper. And as Gil Scott says in Winter in America, the Constitution ain't the Constitution. And so we have got to make sure that instead of building up somebody else's community, we build up our community. Instead of looking for organizations like the Mott Foundation to invest in our community, we invest in our community. If it's $1 a week, you invest in your community. If it's about building solid, viable communities, that means that you got to find a way to keep the dollar velocity in your community going. It's got to pass through more than one set of hands that look like yours if the community is going to be healthy and vibrant. I believe we have an opportunity to create our own change. Our change isn't going to come through reparations. It's not going to come through begging, because one of the things that is clearly obvious is that once somebody tells you no the first time, every subsequent time that they get asked the question after that, it becomes easier for them to say no. So rather than continuing to spin our wheels, Karen Williams, you're right. It's got to be about economic empowerment. It's got to be about building our own so that we have a voice. See, one of the things that you got to think about is you live in a community where predominantly you represent the face of that city. But when it comes to who gets to sit at the table and plan, you're not part of it. And the reason you're not part of it is because they don't think that you know enough to be part of it. So rather than focusing on making it better for them, you got to focus on making it better for yourselves. You got to focus on making sure that you create the ability for wealth creation within your own community. You know, the most valuable asset that any moderate income family has is their own home. And if we aren't trying to turn Black citizens into homeowners, we're missing a big opportunity to create the ability to pass down wealth. Jamaica, you are absolutely right. They don't want us to build. They don't want us at the table. So we need to make sure that we're building our own table. It's more than possible. Just think for a second. If half of the city of Flint put together a pool of $100 a person, you have the foundation there for creating a pool of money that you can use to develop areas of the city that are being ignored. And you know, as the old saying goes, if you build it, they will come. If you make it available, people will come. But if nothing changes about how the leadership in Flint directs the city, then you'll never benefit from the growth that we're talking about for the state. You'll never benefit from the opportunity that presents itself for the entire state. You'll be left out. Cities like Benton Harbor, cities like Flint, cities like Detroit will be, you know, part of the past rather than what the future looks like. So you got to make the future happen. Alexa, sorry if I messed up your name. You say you don't have real leadership in Flint. Well, you know, here's what I'm going to tell you. What everyone should be thinking about is what voter turnout looked like for the last election. You know, you had way too many people who didn't vote, way too many people who sat at home and let someone else make the decision for them. And there's no excuse for that when you have the ability to do vote by mail for everybody. There's no age requirement on it, no nothing like that anymore. You know, it's access to the polls, and people have got to stop voting for people because of a name. You vote for people because they're going to do the work. You vote for people by understanding who's hot air and who's about the business of getting the real work done. You know, I, I was on with Jamaica a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things we talked about was integrity. And integrity and work ethic are very reflective of how you deal with truth. And if you got someone sitting in the biggest chair in the city who is comfortable lying to you, then you need somebody else sitting in that chair. You know, we're witnessing right now someone representing the state of New York in Washington who is a consummate liar, who can't open his mouth without lying. And that means that for the next 2 years, he's not going to be able to do a damn thing, excuse my language, for the people of New York because he's so busy defending himself from allegations that are true. They're not just putting it out there on him. It's true. So integrity matters. And if you are willing to overlook someone's integrity, then you're part of the problem. Phil, you say when is it going to start correcting? Who's going to start correcting all of these mistakes being swept under the rug? Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to be a part of the solution? Are you going to be part of what it takes to get it done? All across that city, people should be coming together right now and having planning sessions. You don't wait until election time to do something. I remember, for me, watching the last mayoral election in the city of Detroit was like a nightmare because you got a city that's composed of 80% Black folks, and rather than focusing on what it takes to win, they spent more time, fighting each other than they did on fighting the real enemy. That can't happen. That just can't happen. Um, we have got to make sure that we are putting people in office who are there to do real work, who aren't just looking for an opportunity to line their pockets, who aren't looking for opportunities for the next step up, who don't view politics through shady eyes, who really recognize that the importance of political engagement is in creating a society where the majority benefit. Now, I'm going to say this, and I can say it without fear of any repercussions. In every city, once you have an election, you got to wait a year, but you do have the ability to recall people after a year. And I would suggest to you that if the current leadership is not what is going to carry the city forward, is not what is going to make for a vibrant economic environment for everyone, that you start doing the footwork now to figure out how you avoid being stuck with that for the next 3 or 4 years. You know, it takes work, but it can be done. And, frankly, we spend way too much time doing the woe is me thing rather than getting something done. You can make sure that come this time next year, you have a working leadership that is carrying the city forward. But you got to put in the work now. Gloria, you're not stuck. You're not stuck. It's not easy, but it's possible to make a change. You aren't stuck. So we can't use that as an excuse. We just say, okay, now we know better. Because, when you have only 30% of the voters engaged with voting, that's part of the problem. Less than 30% of eligible voters in Flint voted in the last mayoral election. That can't keep happening. Yep, got to come together. And here's the thing. I love my people. There's nothing more in the world that I love than my own people. But the thing that always messes me up is we don't recognize that everybody can't be the chief. There's got to be some Indians, and those Indians have got to be dedicated to the big picture and not always focused on what's in it just for me. This is not about me, it's about we. And I'm going to share with you next week a video that talks about what we can do when we work together. It's from a friend of mine, but it is truly an impressive discussion of what it means to be engaged in a community and not necessarily focusing on just me. What am I going to get out of it? What do I have to to benefit from? Nope. 30% of voters will not get it done. Will not get it done. You got to figure out a way to get, a voter turnout that's in the range of 60, 70%. Because see, once they recognize that you're serious, that you are about the business of change, then they're going to be working real hard to do everything that they possibly can to stop you. I think about the last election, and one of the things that I know is that had it not been for apathy in the face of kids getting burned up in a house and someone lying about their credentials, it would have been a whole different story. I want to thank all of you for joining me today, and I look forward to being with you next week on Bill Cobbs on the Record.
And now it's winter, winter in America, and all of the healers done been killed. Sit away. winter in America.